Who fired that shot? The question tore through the icy wind on the ridge as Master Chief Dalton Reeves, the most decorated SEAL leader in his task force, froze mid-stride when he saw the impossible. A single, precise, impossible distance bullet carving through the night and taking down the insurgent commander no one had been able to hit for 7 months. And as radios exploded with confusion and men scrambled behind cover, Reeves stared at the faint silhouette perched on the far edge of the destroyed watchtower. A silhouette he had believed lost, gone, written off. And yet there she was, the lone figure lowering her rifle with the same calm fluidity he had seen only once in his life. And as the dust swirled around them, he whispered, "It's her." Because the woman behind that impossible shot was someone the entire unit had mocked months ago, someone they had dismissed as unfit because she was quiet, because she was small, because she was new, because she carried herself with a stillness the others assumed meant weakness, and the memory sliced through him. The day she arrived at the base, duffel over her shoulder, no insignia beyond the standard issue, her file redacted beyond normal protocol, something Reeves had questioned only to be told it was above his pay grade, and the guys, loud and restless after deployment, had laughed when she introduced herself simply as Riley. Not Sergeant Riley, not Specialist Riley, just Riley. And someone joked that she didn't look like she could fire a rifle, let alone carry one. And yet when she walked past them, she did not shrink, she did not glare, she did not defend herself. She only glanced briefly at the ranged targets and whispered something that only Reeves caught. Distances never lie. And he had felt a strange prickle then, something instinctual, as if she were built from stillness, not noise. And he had found her that evening alone on the long-distance firing line, firing rounds into a target that was barely visible at that hour, each, one hitting so close to center that Reeves stepped closer just to confirm he wasn't imagining it. And when she noticed him watching, she simply lowered her weapon and said, "The wind here moves differently. You have to feel it under your ribs." A sentence so strange yet so accurate that Reeves understood she wasn't just trained, she was seasoned. Carved from experience no file could have captured, but she kept entirely to herself. Ate alone, trained alone, vanished on off days, never bragged, never challenged anyone, never reminded them to stop laughing at her. And when the mission that changed everything came, the mission to capture the insurgent commander known as the Jackal, Riley requested to remain at the forward observation post rather than join the ground assault, a request the younger operators mocked, saying she was scared to fight. But Reeves approved it because something in him whispered that the quiet ones always saw farther. And during that mission, the ambush hit them. So hard and so fast that half the men didn't have time to fire back. And Reeves, pinned behind a burning armored vehicle, heard the faintest echo of a rifle from somewhere impossibly far away. Then another, each one timed between explosions, each one eliminating a threat that none of his men could even see. And when they finally got out of the kill zone and accounted for the shots, someone muttered, "Who the hell fired those?" They were at least 2 miles out, and Reeves had looked around for Riley. But she was gone, her observation post abandoned, her pack missing, her rifle case open and empty, as though she had walked off into the canyon after the final bullet, and command listed her as unaccounted, which everyone translated as dead, though Reeves never believed it, because something about her disappearance felt intentional, not accidental. And now, months later, here she stood. No, not stood, balanced perfectly, on the edge of a broken tower as the insurgent network reorganized deeper in the mountains, and the SEALs closed in on what was supposed to be their final takedown of the Jackal's successor. And once again, the ambush caught them before they even reached the extraction point. But this time the bullet that saved them came before anyone could radio for help. A ghost shot slicing from a direction where no team member had been deployed. A bullet that hit so precisely that even Reeves, capable of making 1,000-yard shots with iron sights, knew instantly that he hadn't been training to match this. This was beyond training, beyond instinct, beyond reason. And when the dust settled and the insurgents began to retreat, Reeves shouted for his men to hold position, not because they were safe, but because he needed to see the source of that shot. and through the fading smoke he saw her steps leaving the tower, calm and balanced as always. Her hood sliding back to reveal the unmistakable scar. Along her jaw, the one he remembered from the only time she ever spoke about her past when she said, "Everyone has a moment that reshapes them. Mine was a doorway I should not have survived." And when she approached the team, the unit grew silent. Men who never respected her now staring as if she were a myth walking, while Reeves stepped forward and whispered, "Riley, where the hell have you been?" And she simply looked at him with eyes that carried entire wars and said, "Finishing what that mission started," then handed him a small encrypted drive containing intel she had gathered over months of working alone. Intel that revealed the truth, that the Jackal successor was planning a strike far larger than anyone knew, a strike that would cost thousands of civilian lives if not stopped, and that Riley had infiltrated their mountain network disguised as a local guide, surviving ambushes, betrayal, starvation, and sleepless nights just to get close enough to gather proof. And now she had returned not for praise, but because, as she put it, a shot is only worth the purpose behind it, and Reeves felt something tighten in his chest as he realized she hadn't abandoned them. She had shielded them, risked everything alone to prevent the next wave of deaths. And as the SEALs escorted her back toward the extraction point, a second ambush erupted, far larger than the first. But this time, Riley didn't wait. She slid into prone position, adjusted for wind in less than half a second, calculated angles with nothing but instinct, and fired 3 shots that shifted the entire battle. And the team fought back with renewed strength, inspired by the ghost sniper who had returned from the dead. And when the firefight finally ended, Reeves placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "You're coming back with us." That's not a request. And for the first time since the day he met her, Riley actually smiled. A small, tired, human smile that said she finally believed she wasn't alone. Before she walked beside him toward the waiting helicopter, its rotors slicing the rising sun, and Reeves turned to the camera drone recording the operation for intel review and muttered, "If you're watching this on our Brave Stories, make sure you subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this is not just a story of shot fired. It's a story of a woman who refused to disappear, refused to break, and refused to let anyone dictate her worth, as the helicopter lifted them toward a horizon that, for the first time in months, felt like a beginning instead of an ending. While Riley sat quietly in the corner seat, her rifle across her knees, her gaze steady, already listening to the wind. And as the helicopter cut through the morning haze, Riley shifted her attention to the worn notebook tucked inside her vest. The same notebook she had carried for months across mountain passes, hostile villages, abandoned outskirts, and narrow escape routes. Its pages filled with coordinates, overheard whispers, route sketches, and coded messages that only she could decipher. And Reeves watched her silently annotate new details even while airborne, her pen movements steady despite the turbulence, and he wondered, not for the first time, how someone who had been mocked as too quiet could possess a mind so ferociously sharp, so tirelessly focused. And when they touched down at Forward Base Helios, chaos erupted as analysts, officers, and medics swarmed the landing pad at the sight of Riley alive, and before Reeves could lead her inside, a stern-faced intelligence colonel marched up, demanding answers. But Riley stepped past him, already unraveling the drive's data on a portable screen, explaining in flawless detail the insurgent supply routes and hidden alliances that no satellite had captured. And the colonel, who hours earlier thought she was dead, stood speechless as she revealed layers of the enemy network that had eluded entire task forces, and Reeves noticed the ripple of quiet respect spreading across the room. Operators who once dismissed her now leaning in, listening, recognizing that the woman they had underestimated had seen more, endured more, and learned more than all of them combined. And when the briefing ended, Riley rubbed her eyes for the first time, exhaustion finally breaking through the steel of her composure, and Reeves placed a protein bar and a bottle of water in front of her, murmuring, "Take a breath, you've earned it." But she shook her head and pointed to a blinking red icon on the map, explaining that a final cell of the Jackal's successor, more ruthless and desperate than the others, was preparing to strike the medical convoy. Scheduled for dawn, a convoy carrying wounded soldiers and local families seeking refuge. And she said quietly, "They won't wait. They think hitting the helpless will break morale." And Reeves swallowed hard because he knew she was right, and he knew the window to stop it was small. But before he could speak, Riley straightened up, reassembled her rifle, checked the chamber, and said, "I'm going," without hesitation, without drama, as if she were discussing a routine patrol instead of walking into a battlefield she had barely survived before. And Reeves felt the weight of leadership twist inside him, because protocol demanded she rest, demanded medical evaluation, demanded psychological assessment. But protocol had never saved them. Riley had, and so he nodded and said, "Not alone. I'm coming." And soon the quick reaction team loaded into 2 armored transports with Riley in the lead seat, maps spread out across her lap, guiding them through narrow canyons and dried riverbeds where ambushes were common but unavoidable. And as they approached the final passageway before the convoy route, Riley tapped twice on the window, signaling the driver to halt. Not because of what she saw, but because of what she felt. The subtle silence of a place where birds should have been. The slight echo of displaced pebbles somewhere ahead. Signs only someone who lived months on enemy terrain would recognize. And Reeves ordered everyone to dismount silently as Riley pressed her palm to the dirt, feeling the faintest vibration of steps. Multiple steps, moving in a staggered pattern consistent with trained fighters. And she whispered, "They're already here," and before anyone could radio a warning, gunfire erupted from the cliffs, trapping them in a deadly crossfire. But Riley didn't duck or panic. She pivoted, tracking muzzle flashes with terrifying precision, firing in rhythmic intervals that cut through the chaos, her bullets striking hostile positions at distances the others couldn't even see clearly. And Reeves and the team surged forward behind her rhythm, pushing uphill inch by inch, driven by the eerie stability of her aim. And as they reached the ridge, they found the second wave of insurgents preparing an RPG to strike the medical convoy. But Riley sprinted ahead, sliding on one knee as she fired a single round that hit the RPG operator's trigger hand with such accuracy that Reeves almost forgot to breathe, and the device clattered harmlessly down the rocks while the remaining fighters scrambled in panic, realizing too late that the ghost sniper from the mountains had returned. And the SEALs overwhelmed the remaining threats quickly, securing the route just in time for the convoy's arrival. And when the lead medic stepped out, thanking them with shaken relief, Riley simply nodded and whispered, "Just keep them moving. They've suffered enough," her voice cracking for the first time, revealing the exhaustion she had buried under sheer will. And as they escorted the convoy safely through the pass, Reeves walked beside her and murmured, "You saved more lives today than some soldiers save in a lifetime." And Riley looked away, her jaw trembling, and said, "Saving them is never the hardest part. Surviving afterward is." A confession so raw that Reeves didn't respond, choosing instead to walk in silence with her, honoring the weight she carried. And when they finally returned to base long after sunset, the command center erupted in applause at the sight of Riley. But she stepped past them, uninterested in praise, heading instead to the quiet corner of the barracks where she finally allowed herself to sit, breathing deeply, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline had faded. And Reeves followed her, placing a folded blanket around her shoulders, whispering, "It's over for tonight. Rest." And for once, she didn't argue, didn't insist she was fine, didn't push herself back into the field. She simply leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes, though sleep didn't come easily. And Reeves sat beside her in silence, knowing she wasn't just fighting insurgents. She was fighting memories, fears, ghosts, and the unforgiving burden of perfection, the burden she had carried alone until now.